everyone. My name is Lisa Goulet. I am the Canadian Membership Engagement Coordinator for UArctic, situated at Memorial University, and your host for today's event. The University of the Arctic, or UArctic, is a network of university, colleges, research institutes, and other organizations concerned with education and research in and about the North. I would like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. While we meet on this virtual platform, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land, which we each call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and improving our own understanding of local Indigenous people and their cultures. From coast to coast, country to country, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Beothuk, Mi'kmaq, Métis, First Nations, and Sámi people. Please take a moment as you prepare for this conversation to reflect and acknowledge the mistakes of the past and to consider how we can each, in our own way, support Indigenous people and move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Thank you for joining us today for our presentation on small and northern colleges, community impact, capacity, and regional resilience. Just to let you know, we have about 30 minutes for a panel discussion, followed by 20 minutes where we will have the opportunity to put some of your questions to our speakers. To keep things simple and to make sure we can get to as many questions as possible, we have enabled the Q&A function, and you can find this at the bottom right side of your screen. Feel free to post your questions throughout the session and try to keep them as short as possible. Lastly, I would like to remind you that this session will be recorded, and to all those who registered will receive a link in an event follow-up email. Without further ado, it is my great pleasure to officially introduce our moderator, Stephen Heel. Stephen Heel is a senior affiliated researcher with the Arctic Center, University of Lapland, Finland, Director of Innovations at Frontier Economics, UK. His work sits at the intersection of policy, climate change, and tracing of long-term impacts, with particular focus on Arctic networks and strategic collaboration. He is a member of the UArctic's President's Circle, where he supports initiatives including a series of impact studies. More specifically, he's worked with the Arctic Canadian members over the last year to understand the impacts of their work. Without further ado, I will hand it over to you, Stephen, and I am going to turn my screen off.
Thank you very much indeed, Lisa, and thank you, UArctic and Memorial, for setting up this webinar. I'm delighted to be here and with 4 fantastic panelists. I will allow them to introduce themselves and answer a set of questions that we've been thinking about on this topic. We have Doug Lauvstad from the University of the North. We have Jamal Shirley from the Nunavut Arctic College. We have Samuel Valkeapää from the Sámi University of Applied Sciences in Norway. And we have the inimitable Sheila from UArctic and Memorial University. So I think I will start by stepping aside and asking our panelists to introduce just a little bit about themselves and what their institution is, so that you, the listeners, can get a sense of where they come. Why don't we start with Doug?
Hello, everybody. I'm Doug Lauvstad. I'm president here at University College of the North, and we are located in sunny northern Manitoba. And we're a small institution spread out over a huge geography, which is probably quite familiar with most people in terms of dynamics. I've been the president here since 2017. And been working on a number of issues related to sort of economic and social development in northern regions, trying to position the institution as a bit of a catalyst in that area.
Thank you, Doug. Perhaps Samuel, you can go next.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. I'm Valkeapää Samuel, and I'm born in Finland, or Sámi in the Finnish side. And now I work in University of Applied Sciences in Sámi, Norwegian side. I am Sámi, Both parents have been are Sámi, and I've been working in Sámi related education or Sámi education 30 years approximately, nearly every stages. And now I'm working in Sámi University of Applied Sciences. The reason why I came here to work is Sámi language, and it's the core of our university's work. So it's grounded on the epistems, Sámi epistems, and works within those. And we picturize. It's a good opportunity to picturize own worldviews. I mean, Sámi communities' worldviews.
Fantastic, Samuel. Thank you. And we'll come back to language as well during the discussion. Can I invite Jamal to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, and thanks so much for the opportunity to participate in this panel. My name is Jamal Shirley. I'm the Director of Innovation and Research for Nunavut Arctic College. I'm based in Iqaluit, Nunavut, in the ancestral homeland of the Okumuut Inuit of Southern Baffin Island. Nunavut Arctic College serves the largest post-secondary service region in Canada. Nunavut spans 3 time zones, encompasses 2 million square kilometers. That's 2/5 of Canada's landmass. So the geographic realities that Doug alluded to are ever present in our educational and research programming and visioning. We offer diverse learning opportunities that prepare adult Nunavut for professional careers, and we provide educational programming that supports Nunavut along multiple stages of their educational journey. And I'll elaborate more through the discussions, but again, thanks for this opportunity, and it's wonderful to meet everybody.
Brilliant, Jamal. Thank you. And look forward to that, hearing more about Nunavut Arctic College. Sheila Downer, I bring you in last because you have a different type of role.
I do. Thank you, Stephen. Greetings, everyone. My name is Sheila Downer, as Stephen said, and I serve as the Vice President of Northern Community Engagement with the University of the Arctic, as well as the Strategic Northern Liaison with the Marine Institute of Memorial University, which is based in a number of locations within the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. For more than 4 decades, I have lived and worked in Labrador, partnering with Indigenous governments, community organizations, educational institutes, and with regional leaders on issues related to community development and economic resilience, education, and capacity building. And I have been a part of the UArctic network since 2018. And in my VP role, I have certainly had discussions and have been working with all 3 of the northern colleges that are a part of the panel here today. But have been working with a number of them. Over 50% of the UArctic network membership is actually small and northern institutions, sorry. And for those of you who are wondering, what does that definition look like? So the small and northern colleges have been identified arbitrarily by Sheila Downer. It's not necessarily a definition that has been instituted by UArctic. And so we have been looking at our membership with less than 3,000 students. And so that makes up 50% of the network. And so I come to the conversation at this table as a bit of a non-traditional participant. Yes, I work in the post-secondary sector, but my background is not as an academic. My career has been totally focused on community development and engagement in Labrador and in the North. And I'm delighted to be part of this panel and look forward to the discussion and the perspectives of my fellow panelists and from the webinar participants.
Oh, we seem to have lost Stephen here.
Oh,
Just give me a moment here. Why don't we, while he is working on getting back online, I will ask the first question here, which is about your role and value. So the question is, what is one role your institution plays in community life that people outside the North often underestimate? And if you could give an example, that would be fantastic. We will start with you, Doug.
Yeah, I think when you look at small institutions like us that have that geographic kind of footprint that's large and dispersed, we don't have what some of the larger urban areas have. And I often think, like in Manitoba here, the business of Manitoba is done in the hallways of the convention centers and in the parking lots of the legislature. And there's this abilities for people to communicate and interact with each other that physically or geographically not there in sort of rural and northern areas. So small institutions often play the role, not only deliver education and training, but you're the convener, you're the facilitator, you're the conversation starter. And because we often have a regional mandate that encompasses many towns and communities, you get the opportunity to bring people together. So I guess in our case, one of the things that I initiated a number of years ago, more as a small gathering, was a conference that I call Linkages, and I invited people from industry and government and communities and the First Nations just to get together and start becoming aware of what was happening in people's in people's areas. Well, it just kept growing and growing and growing, and now I have to offer it twice a year in multiple locations. And I have to say, it's not because I'm such a charming host. It's because people have this thirst for connection and interaction and being able to talk about regional and northern issues. So we focus primarily on economic development. But the interesting conversation is we can talk about political realities, workforce development, trades. We bring in people from around the world, literally, to talk about the challenges they face in northern regions. And it's kind of cascaded into this opportunity for all people involved in multiple leadership levels to get together and sort of start planning and organizing and talking, and it's now devolved into one of the outcomes of the conferences is that there's a letter that's sent on behalf of sort of the northern regions to the premier of our province to say, here's what the North is thinking about, and here's where we would like to have government direct their attention to. So that role of gathering place as the conversation starter, I think people don't appreciate in rural and northern areas how vital that is to keeping the region growing and prospering.
Thank you, Doug. That's a great conversation starter. Sorry, my internet dropped off, but thank you for picking that up. Perhaps, Jamal, you can talk to the role of your the Nunavut Arctic College and maybe something that the audience might not expect.
Sure. Thanks, Stephen. Nunavut Arctic College's mandate when we were established as an institution in 1995 was defined by Inuit and by our leadership territorial. I would add to that the college is actually a territorial corporation, so we report to the minister responsible for education in our territory. And one of the core founding mandates was to provide post-secondary education closer to home. Nunavut's population of about 40,000 people live in 25 very isolated fly-in only communities throughout the territory. And the median or average age of our student and our student body is only about 350, but the average age is 29. So we cater to a mature student population, and most of whom are raising children, and they've got deeply rooted connections and ties to their extended families and communities. So to address that and provide educational opportunities that meet the needs of our learners, the college established a network of community learning centers throughout the territory that provide educational deliveries in community, supplemented with deliveries in regional campuses. And this allows for our students to study at home and to forego the burden, the emotional, financial, and social burden of having to leave Nunavut for post-secondary training, which was a huge barrier. So that is one really unique feature of the college. And also I would have to stress our student services model too, which through which we have full-time employed elder mentors on campus and in community, Inuit counselors trained in counseling, provision of counseling and support services founded in Inuit worldview. And we have supports like food security supports, mental health, and other unique student services that meet the needs of our student population and really fosters success through community-based education that highlights and promotes Inuit language, culture, and skill.
Thank you, Jamal. That unique support model. That we'll come back to that, and the language, the Inuit-led language element. Samuel, I know that in the Sámi University of Applied Sciences, that's entirely in Sámi language, is it not?
Yeah, I think it's it's built very cleverly, and due the Sámi language is the main language there to work with. Although we are surrounded as a Sámi in Norwegian country, Russian, Finnish, and Sweden. So it's a language over the borders, and in addition, we can use English, Finnish, Swedish, Norwegian, and some of Russian. But it creates unique environment to those who are mostly Sámi backgrounded, and also for those who can Sámi to work in Sámi language. But mainly, I see my institution like it was others said also. It's a kind of a gathering place to deal and discuss about on issues. And I feel that these are not too many. I found out that this my university, in that sense, for the Sámi community, it serves place to handle and legitimize own knowledge, so that based on this knowledge, what we create, what we serve or create and teach is visible in teacher education later, or if they are being elected to the municipality positions as a decision makers, those knowledge base is built on the Sámi values, Sámi valuing Sámi language areas, etc. And I think
Thank you.
it's super important.
Yeah, so we hear of convening places, a gathering place, convening, and also places that remain local. Yeah, as Jamal was saying. Sheila, do you and sorry, there's a thread there, which is Doug sends a letter to the Premier. Jamal, you report to the corporation. Samuel, do you have a linkage with the Sámi Parliament? How does that work?
My brother is in the Finnish Sámi Parliament, and he has been in the Norwegian Parliament. And then we have also the community NGO. I am a board of one Finnish local association, and also I have relatives who work in the Sámi Council, which is cross-national Sámi organ. So I
Yes.
could say
so
that
there's a
working
network
in
of
yeah, definitely
a network
connections
of
are for the
connections
chosen.
to, Sheila, when looking across all those three examples, how do you contrast that or see with across the whole network you work with in Canada?
Yeah, I think like addressing the question. I mean, we've heard all three of the other panelists highlight, the areas of strength that they've accomplished or been working on within the regions. And I think one of the things that would come as a major surprise or to most of the audience here is the extent and the breadth of work that happens across small and northern colleges. And I have been fortunate, through my work in UArctic to get to hear from many of the northern colleges about the extent of that work. I mean, they're doing education and training. They're doing like major research that's addressing local community needs. And they're doing major public engagement and community related work. All that helps to contribute to workforce development, industry development, community and regional development. And it's work that's happening locally, but it's happening nationally because they're connected through their networks, but they're also doing like fantastic work internationally by being involved in, whether it's at leadership tables at UArctic, being involved in thematic networks, being part of the North to North program, collaborating on projects, UArctic funded projects. And I think if you look at that whole picture about the extent of the work that all of the small and northern colleges are doing, I think that's rather fantastic and demonstrates a good report card for our small and northern colleges. So that is what I would like to highlight is the fantastic work that's happening across that part of the UArctic membership.
Yeah, thank you,
All,
Sheila.
all while they're
I'd like to.
challenged. All while they're challenged. Sorry, Stephen. With limited resources and limited capacity. So that's.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd like to bring out some of those challenges in a minute. One of the things I'd like to bring the communities to the table and ask, Doug, you once told me, I'd like to ask about how you align the work you do, prioritize the work you do with what the communities need. You each serve different communities in different ways. But how do you align what you do with what's really needed so that they get impact? And Doug, you once told me of a list of 175 requests from a community you visited.
Yeah, just a brief story, but we were in a community, a fly-in community, and in preparation for, I had brought a number of my team there, and in preparation for the meeting, the community had held community meetings, and the chief and council had gone through a list of requests and prioritized them. It was 175-ish things on the list that they wanted. Everything from square dancing to, painting classrooms in the evening through to, degree programs in education or pre-medicine. It was like a very comprehensive list, right from recreational programs through to full degrees. And you walk away sensing the depth and breadth of need in many of these communities for everything from programs that bring the community together or give the youth something to do or address chronic skill shortages, whether it's, teaching, health, trades. Every community is struggling with a skills deficit in a number of sectors. So how do we get a sense? It's just we often are being challenged to be all things to all people all over the place, and it stresses the organization deeply, and we are often struggle to respond in a meaningful way, especially when we don't have the luxury of sort of the critical masses in terms of numbers or we can run a program in a community and get 3 or 4 people that may enroll. So you're challenged in terms, I call it the architecture. How do you create a structure where education and training can be used to the greatest effect, can be laddered, can create pathways for people to move from community to maybe larger institutions and ultimately into the workforce. But the actual identification of those priorities, with all the technology and everything that's available, it's nothing more than just boots on the ground. You got to go into the community. You got to talk to people. You got to host events and bring them in. It's just basic retail engagement. I don't think there's any other way. And I think colleges and institutes, in particular leadership, get a better sense of what's happening in the region than many other places who aren't or who don't have boots on the ground in many of these communities.
Yeah, I can see that. And I also say it's to organize a training course for square dancing if you've only got 3 people. Jamal, do you see the same contrast, the same mechanism? Do you agree you have to have boots on the ground in order to set the priorities?
No, it's really interesting. Everything that Doug explained in relation to his institution resonates and is almost identical to our realities and challenges in Nunavut in structuring and determining which programs we're to deliver and that meet the most pressing and important needs and provide the outcomes that again really increase employment and opportunity for our community residents. And we too are receiving a countless number of requests for program deliveries, both from community partners, from inuit organizations, from territorial government officials, from the private sector, to meet critical labor shortages across numerous areas of importance. And it is a real challenge to define where we're going to focus our limited resources financially and in terms of people to deliver these trainings in community. But I think that the college's core suite of programs and the model that we've adopted to provide not only certificates, diplomas, and degrees, but also academic upgrading and college foundational training for our residents who may not have completed high school, but who want to continue their learning journey, and to support them in succeeding through college program deliveries. We have a very strong focus on that foundational academic upgrading and pre-trades training as part of college deliveries.
What do the communities actually tell you, Jamal? What do they say to you when they say, well, this is how it helped or how it didn't help? What sort of feedback do you get?
Well, I can only answer that with specific examples of individual students who've gone through our programming and on to success in many different professions and occupations. One great example that I like to give is the college offers a very unique training program called the Environmental Technology Program, which prepares Nunavut to enter the workforce as environmental practitioners across a range of different occupations. And through this program of study, students learn, for example, wildlife conservation, fisheries biology, GIS, environmental assessment, land use planning, those academic and type of courses, but they also obtain professional micro certifications, for example, in small vessel operator proficiency, possession, firearms licensing, wilderness first aid. Those core proficiencies that, for example, then can allow a graduate of our program to open their own outfitting business because they now have the requirements to be licensed to provide those services. And we have a couple examples of students who have completed our environmental technology program and now have incredibly successful tourism outfitting businesses that provide unique and very special services to tourists and visitors, and also, for example, provide expert research logistics support services that build on our students' foundational knowledge and experience and skills as Inuit hunters and travelers who are so incredibly skilled on our lands and waters. So to complement that with academic and professional training through the college to enhance their ability to thrive economically and through as an entrepreneurial endeavor, and through our public sector and Inuit organizations through a number of professional capacities. So I could
That's a
go
great
on and
example,
on.
Jamal, because not only they thrive individually, but they're contributing to the community if they're building businesses or outfitting businesses, as you described.
Exactly.
Yeah. Samuel, by contrast, in Sápmi, how do you ensure that what your institution does fits the needs of your community? And are there any examples where it does fit well or where it misfits?
I many times think that our institution is being founded due to the political storm which became in early 80s due to the dam making around the Alta River in Norwegian side of Sápmi.
Mm-hmm.
And it was debate, what does Norway need and what does Sámi community need? And based on that, Sámis have been built own university, and it's and it has grounding in Nordic Sámi Institute, which is Sámi organization led by Sámi people, and I think it's quite well represented, at least around the local Sámis. But like here, like Jamal and Doc were saying that environment is very large to cover, and there's no structures to that areas to cover, and that creates kind of a also how to if Sámi languages are many, how can we provide as a Northern Sámi institution learning possibilities to other Sámi languages and those areas don't have this kind of structures what is being built to the Northern Sámi area and Norwegian side. And I kind of see also that while we kind of hire people, I don't know which universities teaching connections society, and should that be kind of a rewarded as a skill or capacity to work within the Sámi University of Applied Sciences? I think that could be also an important role to have these connections, to be able to serve community better. And what comes to this resources and capacities, it's interesting discussion what I hear, that there's a lot about the competence and skills to run this kind of institution, which requires administrative skills and new skills if it's founded in Sámi area, which other skills are being important. And if the states are giving requirements or fundings based on the other institutions, how they govern other institutions, is it kind of a fair to fund us similarly if we have the long land masses to cover? I'm going to another direction also, but to keep in what you were asking, it's it's a good question. We have a close connections to the society, and I hope that our boots are on the legs and we walk.
Okay. Yes.
Walk.
Thank you. Yeah, and you talk about how you get capacity in the institution as well, and I guess that's a challenge for both Jamal and for Doug too, in terms of getting your own capacity and to fill. I mean, Jamal, you talked once about the many unfilled positions challenge, in that in order to deliver on all of these multiple tasks, you need to, have your own people to fill those boots. Is capacity internally to your institution a challenge as well?
Yes, it is, and it's a challenge that is faced across the board in our territory and across nationally too. There's the shortage of people to fill critical positions. So as a result, we wear multiple hats and do multiple jobs in Nunavut Arctic College. And I really have to commend the dedicated, very capable colleagues I have within the institution that are helping to ensure that we can continue providing quality education despite those shortages of the unfilled positions that were challenged. But I would also stress that emphasizes in our case the importance of strategic reciprocal partnerships with external collaborators to support delivery of our programming and to build our capacity, especially when it comes to research and education. There are many really excellent researchers who have a strong interest in working in our territory, who want to collaborate with Nunavut Arctic College and who approach us. And it is often very beneficial for us to engage in these research partnerships, but carefully though, because sometimes those arrangements are less beneficial to us and more opportunistic in how we are involved. But then I think a real important focus for our institution moving forward will be to strengthen collaborations that again focus on building research capacity and providing meaningful opportunities for our students, staff, and faculty to receive training and experience in applied research with good partners. So the importance
So
of
the solution is partly around the partnership with other institutions, perhaps in Canada, maybe even other places.
And I'll just close by saying that the University of the Arctic forums such as this and the Northern Network members allow for that opportunity within the Northern Post-Secondary institutional space, which is incredibly valuable. And Arctic College looks forward to strengthening those relationships that will provide really meaningful, tangible opportunities for us to build our research and integrate research into our learning programs more effectively.
Yeah, thank you. Doug, and then I'll come to you, Sheila, for some bit of an overview. But Doug, how do you see the solution to this capacity challenge, the many unfilled positions? And it links, I'll just bring in one of the questions from the Q&A that was, is there a policy change that would have an impact to help that, or is it a matter of building networks?
Yeah, it's difficult. And Northern universities aren't just a colder version of a Southern university.
Yeah.
So it takes a very special type of person who can come in. If you want predictability, if you want sort of stability, a bureaucratic environment, don't go north. If you're going to deliver a program, you have to be very flexible. You have to be understanding and sort of the context that it's being. You have to really meet students where they are at academically, socially, financially, with their family situation, all that stuff. So you have to be very flexible, resilient, and fairly persistent. And the skills that you need the most, which we find are in the biggest deficit, are those project management skills and ability to react and turn, because there isn't a lot of predictability, whether it's funding dollars or even just transportation. The logistics side of delivering is a challenge at all times. But what we find, though, is that people that come to want to work with us are very mission-driven people. They want to change the North. They want to help their communities grow and prosper. They want to, make things better, and they see education and training as the vehicle to make it happen. And quite frankly, in our case, finding people like that is hard. But when you do get people, you inject a lot of passion and enthusiasm into the organization.
Yeah, finding them and keeping hold of them, I guess, once you get a good one.
Yeah, that's the other side. Yeah.
That's great. We'll come back to your many pots problem, but first, in terms of Sheila and capacity building, across the small colleges, do you see any solutions applied elsewhere?
Well, I think about UArctic's role as a network, and what is the role of UArctic and how can it help? So instead of, I guess, looking at what can UArctic do, I think it's more valuable to think about a network like UArctic and what does it enable the small and northern colleges members, what can they do? Because really, I think the sweet spot in a network like UArctic is really the collaboration and having these platforms for discussion. And what's the knowledge that can be shared? What are the practical tools that can be shared? Are there templates? Are there platforms that we can work together on? I know Lisa's been doing a bunch of work with the northern members or colleges within Canada, and looking at potential areas for collaboration and how can they share tools and information, and how can they collaborate on their programming, perhaps collaborating on projects. And then I'm reminded about the work of the Teacher Education Network, thematic network of UArctic, and how they had worked together on a project where around land-based incorporation of land-based curriculum within the school for the school program, primary, high school, secondary school system. And so they did a conference, an online conference that involved teachers in Finland, teachers in Norway, teachers in Northern Canada for sharing information, where now teachers are and sharing models that they use within their classroom. And now they're taking some of those examples and using them to incorporate within the curriculum of their own classrooms back in their home communities, which I think is a fantastic example of how, a network and being part of a circumpolar network can be beneficial to small and northern colleges.
Yeah, and help you do more with fewer resources. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm just a quick reminder to the audience. It would be great to see some more questions coming in. We've got a few coming in, so please do put your questions too. There's always a question that's coming in around funding. Yeah, and I'd like to put that to Doug and Samuel, because you both talked in the past about funding in different ways, in contrasting ways actually. And Doug, you described that there's a many pots problem in Canada, at least, in that for small and northern institutes, there's funding is available through lots of different avenues.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult to coordinate or to access that without the capacity. Is that right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I'll speak from my jurisdiction that I work in, but I think it's probably a familiar thing. Just the many pots that are available just in sort of the Indigenous Services Canada pot, different streams, how it's dispersed and managed, and it comes in as a lump sum and maybe go out to individual communities and they can sort of spend it as they will. There are multiple agencies, not-for-profits, for-profits that typically maybe some government funded that are in this doing literacy training or remedial training or job training or life skills or so all of a sudden the landscapes gets littered with multiple agencies all and I'm not being critical, doing good work and meaningful and necessary, but there is no kind of like I'm big on the word architecture today, that we haven't built kind of the framework or the pathways or the structures, the organizational pathways that can flow money, that students can navigate easily, a very user-friendly model that is supported, and so they can get funded, get apply to an institution and be admitted relatively without sort of all kinds of to and fro's and back and forth and being ping-ponged from one agency to another. We fund this and you fund that. It is, I think there's a desperate need particularly in northern regions, simply because we don't have that critical mass and we're dispersed and don't have a lot of the capacity that you do to create the architecture for the student pathway, whether it's funding, student supports, scholarships, bursaries, all those things. That is a much more user-friendly. I've heard from many students that they get to the front door of the institution and they have to turn around because this funding didn't come through, their housing allowance didn't, their childcare didn't, it's just, and you are almost in awe of some of these students that do make it through all the hurdles and speed bumps and pathways that they have to do to get there. They have a level of persistence and sort of target acquisition that is to be admired.
Thank you, Doug. Yeah, that's speed bumps on the road there. Yeah. I know, well, I think the situation's a bit different in Norway. Is that right, Samuel?
Yeah, it's different. A little bit different. I think the education, higher education, is free in general for the Scandinavian people, higher education, and it creates a lower as I understand how it is in Canada, and it might be that you need to pay the semester fees, etc. I might be wrong, but I think
So for you, do you see a different challenge in funding?
For the students, I think it's different,
Yeah.
at least.
What about the
But
research?
the research, it's interesting, this capacity and finding out people. What if, and this ping pong, what Doug said, how to make it so that it's like golf playing or longer term commitments to fund. Could that bring steadiness and not to be needed to balance about the stability, and do we find enough workforce for that certain position if we get funding for 2 or 3 years in research? How can we build up the capacity and commitments through 2-3 years fundings only? Why couldn't they be for example 8 years? Could they be?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Then it's easier to say, well, you have if you come up north, you have work for 8 years if you want, or if we can provide only for 2 years, why would they take our positions rather than go elsewhere where it's more secure to find a new job?
Thank you. Yeah.
And there's but I agree a lot what Jamal and Doc said, very much.
Mm-hmm. Can we go to Jamal and ask if you see a fairer funding model that would work better for you, for Nunavut Arctic College? And there's a question from Mary in the chat as well, in terms of the Q&A, curious about how, if you see your funding models for student support structures different to that Doug describes at the University College of the North, or are they similar?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the funding model for post-secondary students in Nunavut is likewise kind of a patchwork of different sources that students apply for and are supported in securing. It's a little more integrated, I think, than the scenario Doug presented, but still the need to obtain sufficient financial resources for our students to live well during their educational uh, uh, course of stay with the colleges is a real challenge. And I mean, you're all aware of the astronomical cost of living in Nunavut. It is really putting a burden and a strain on all our residents. And our students often do need additional supports through our college food banks and other student services to meet needs. But thankfully, we did recently receive through the government of Nunavut a significant increase in the amount of financial assistance that Nunavut students are eligible for, and that's certainly been a welcome for our students. But absolutely, the need for a better architecture, as Doug mentioned, to integrate those funding opportunities, especially scholarships and other bursaries and awards that are not well communicated sometimes to our students would be absolutely beneficial. And then building on Samuel's comments, yes, the short-term nature of research funding does put a lot of strain on our ability to sustain long-term research partnerships and continue collaborative work that is dependent on those funding pots that are have to be reapplied for periodically. And with more and more researchers coming into our territory, competition is increasing for Arctic research funding, which places a number of different stressors on us as an institution and our communities. And I think moving forward, we're only going to see a intensification of Arctic research, which will further amplify some of these challenges and opportunities in that space.
Okay. Thank you, Jamal. And yeah, then moving to Sheila, and then I'll ask each of you for just a closing thought or remark on the conversations that we've had. Sheila.
Yeah, so quickly, Stephen, I guess two things around, or to address the 2 points that have been brought up, like student supports. I hear exactly what Doug and well, Samuel and Jamal have all highlighted. There is a need, and it's something that myself and Lisa, through the UArctic supports that are taking place within Canada, and thinking about how can we help to address this, that single window approach or a more coordinated approach for student supports. But across a network, a circumpolar network like UArctic, it's not an easy fix, if I can call it a fix, or a solution to it. But I think there's ways that we could at least be profiling or talking about the different types of opportunities that are out there. And I'm kind of taking away from this discussion today that there's an opportunity here for us to do a webinar for students that's focused around supports, I think. And then maybe some, further discussion can help highlight some better solutions than what we currently have. In terms of the research funding, I mean, with the national funding that comes from the Canadian government through Global Affairs for collaborative projects, for those people who are not aware, we offer 3 different funding streams for collaborations for research projects. And we've consistently heard from those that have been involved for the past 5 years that we need more sustained funding, or we need a different model. And so what we've tried to do in this next round of funding is to at least, it's not a perfect solution, but at least for 5 projects, we're able to provide funding to the tune of $100,000 that will allow the partnership to work over a 5-year period, as opposed to the 1 year and 2 year periods that we've done in the past. We still have those funding streams for the shorter term projects, but I mean, we consistently report back to Global Affairs that this is what we're hearing from the project partners, that they want more sustained funding. So I concur with all of the comments that have been made by the panelists.
Thank you, Sheila. And I'm conscious that we've only got a couple of minutes left, and there's some great questions coming in the chat. And thank you, Samuel, for replying to some of those directly in the chat. Just to offer a chance for closing thoughts on looking to the future of small and northern community colleges. Jamal, Samuel, and then Doug.
Yeah, thanks so much for the opportunity to be part of this panel. I've learned so much and have really good ideas from the other panelists, and that I'm going to build on and consider further. I think that Northern Post-Secondary Institution, Northern colleges have a huge and vitally important role to play in bringing education, research, and training home, and ensuring that the outcomes of all our work is really centered around building that sense of self in our students and our learners, and supporting stronger connections to family and community, and making a difference, making a change in our lives. And I think the challenges and pressures socially, economically, politically, financially that we face in Nunavut will require a very strong Arctic college in the years ahead, and I think we're up to that challenge.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jamal. And Samuel, looking forward, do you see the...
I had the thought that because we have same challenges, and UArctic is as providing this panel, I'm kind of grateful to hear what that we share the similar challenges. What if we could define our field and start finding solutions for that together?
Mm-hmm.
And if we lack the capacities, you might have that. And what could be network for Indigenous university administration, for example.
That's
To
a really
provide,
interesting idea. Yeah.
for example.
Thank you, Samuel. That's a great idea. And I'm conscious of there's lots to talk about the Clyde River Cultural Campus as well, Jamal, at Nunavut Arctic College, and maybe some of the similarities or shared learning with your university, Samuel. Doug, parting thoughts from yourself?
Yeah, I think, you know, if we look around the world, the rest of the world is starting to look north, whether it's defense initiatives, whether it's critical minerals, whether it's resources, whether it's indigenous rights and sort of the co-development opportunities that are there. Northern institutions will play a very strategic role in that whole global geopolitical, economic, and other issues that are happening. You know, and what does that look like? I don't know. You know, will we have enough resources? Probably not. But I think institutions will be challenged to do things significantly different than in any other time. You know, whether it's training for new job opportunities, the research, the engagement of communities and Indigenous people in the agenda that's being laid out, ahead of us. Northern institutions have the opportunity to step up and play a vitally important strategic role in sort of the next 10, 20 years that's ahead of us.
Thank you, Doug. That's, sounds very true in terms of the challenge ahead. Sheila, I think we're at time, so do you want to wrap up? Thank you very much
I'll
to
be
the
very quick.
panelists.
So really
Yep.
glad to be part of this great panel. I think one of the key messages that I'm taking away from today's discussion is that the small northern colleges their value extends far beyond the classrooms and campuses where they're located. I think this is far more evident in the communities, small communities and regions where they're based. I think if you asked any community, they would be able to talk role that the college plays. So this is much more evident than you might see where there are larger universities. With 50% of UArctic's membership that's actually made up by the small and northern colleges, I think there's a lot of work. I mean, there's changes happening, and we do quarterly dialogue sessions with the small and northern members. I encourage anyone that is connected here to reach out to myself or Lisa so you can become part of that, at least know when we're doing them. And we will continue to try to, I think there's a lot more work to be done for the small northern college voices to be setting the agenda at UArctic. And I look forward to continuing to work with that group of our membership.
Thank you very much, Sheila, and I hope this is another step on that piece of that work that all of you are doing in your different geographies, whether they're the size of France, 40% of Canada, or covering multiple countries in Sámi. Lisa, back to you.
Thank you. We have come to the end of our time. I would once again like to sincerely thank you, Stephen, Sheila, Doug, Jamal, and Samuel, for sharing your time and expertise with us today. Thanks to all of you out there for attending and for your great questions. Join us for our next webinar in the series on September 23rd on Arctic waste, challenges and community solutions. And just as I indicated earlier, this session has been recorded, so keep an eye on your email for the link. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, everyone, and goodbye. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.